All right, next up is Jeffrey Silverman, and he is going to be talking to us about all the resources related to his quest to help astronomers turn into data scientists. Have I got that straight?
Yep, that sounds good to me.
All right, take it away because you have a lot of great resources in the agenda, and we'll be making sure that everyone has access to those as we move forward. So thanks a
Yeah,
lot.
do you think I should share that so I can kind of walk through all of them so
Yeah,
people see it? Or
that would be
okay,
great. If you'd like to. That would be fine.
okay, yeah, I'll go ahead and share that. Just give me a sec here.
I've got that link.
Share and that and okay. So hopefully you can see the schedule doc, the agenda
Yes.
doc here.
Yeah, and go ahead and make that just, why don't you increase the size on that, go up to make it 125% or something. Oh, there you go. That looks, oh, wow, that's good. We like
Okay,
that. We
great.
like
All right, so yeah, here is a certainly incomplete but hopefully useful starting point of resources for folks in astronomy and physics academic roles that are looking for careers in data science, where data science is quite a broad term and includes anything related to big data, technology, some engineering type roles as well. Lots of stuff is applicable. So the first thing I'll talk about is ATDS, the Astronomers Turned Data Scientists community. That's a grassroots community that I helped organize a few years ago, and I'm one of the leaders of currently. That link goes to our main website, which is atds.space. On there, you can find a lot of links, including some that I call out here. We have a YouTube channel, which includes video of our podcast and recordings of almost all the talks from the last 5 ATDS meetings. So every year at the Winter AAS for the last 7 years, we've had a one-day splinter session for astronomers turned data scientists, and we've recorded the last 5. And so you can see the talks on our YouTube channel. Also on the YouTube channel is our podcast, and so we do have a podcast. We put out new episodes approximately once a month, not quite that often, but we're hoping to get to about approximately once every month. So we have, I believe, 10 or 11 episodes out now as of the beginning of March 2025. And so those are all on YouTube, but you can also find them, the audio versions, on basically everywhere you get your podcasts. So Spotify and Apple Podcasts and a handful of other platforms as well. We have a Slack workspace, which you can find a link to on our main page. Lots of different channels in there for feedback on resumes and job postings and general discussions. Channels for our ATDS splinter sessions each year as they come up. So lots of good stuff in there. Lots of current data scientists who are former astronomers and lots of current astronomers that are looking to get into data science. So lots of good resources and networking there. And then also something that's relatively new, just about a month or so old, is ATDS has a LinkedIn group that you can ask to join on LinkedIn. As annoying as LinkedIn might be, it is actually useful for folks looking for careers in tech, in data science. So I encourage you to fill out your LinkedIn profile and potentially join our group. Not too active yet, but I think it could be something that is a good networking resource in addition to the other stuff I listed. Um, People sometimes ask about, are there presentations or slides that we can look at about, this astronomer to data science transition or types of careers? There's a couple of good ones. One is by a longtime ATDS supporter, Taka Tanaka, who is a data scientist, is formerly an astronomer. He has a PowerPoint deck that is available on GitHub where you can download it and look at it yourself. He wrote the bulk of it, but also got feedback from a few other folks, including myself and a number of other people. It hasn't been updated in a few years, so there may be some things that are a little bit stale, but a lot of the basics are kind of perennially always true, and a lot of the links are still good. Sort of similar, I give talks about moving from academic astronomy research to data science careers in tech. And one from a couple of years ago was actually recorded and publicly posted. This was part of a career, non-academic or beyond academia career panel day at UC Berkeley, which is where I went to grad school. So there's a recording of that. Again, a lot of the stuff is evergreen. A lot of the stuff is still true and accurate, but it is a couple of years old. So, there may be a couple things that have evolved over the last couple of years. As far as looking for these types of jobs, all the main job boards that you can think of are going to be where you want to look. LinkedIn is my personal favorite. Indeed, Dice, ZipRecruiter, those also have lots of data science and tech related jobs in a variety of fields and all over the world. So those are places to look for jobs. And then the last big chunk I want to talk about here is sort of the skills that you might want to have when you're applying for data science roles and places that you can try to build those up. There are many, many examples out there. Here are just some that I've personally used and like, or ones that have been recommended to me by trustworthy sources. On the coding side, that's the first main skill. Many academics these days are using Python, which is great. I came up in the days of IDL and IRAF. So Python is important. SQL is also very important. So LeetCode is a popular website that has a lot of practice problems of different languages and different types of problems and different levels of difficulty. There's a lot of free SQL and Python tutorials out there to kind of get the basics and level up a little bit. Understanding and knowing how to use notebooks. So Jupyter is a popular free one. Oops, I spelled it wrong. It is that spelling of Jupyter. Had the astronomy spelling in my head. Google Colab is Google's version of these notebooks. There's a lot of tutorials on how to use them, and there's a lot of tutorials on coding that are written in these notebooks, and they're very nice for sort of teaching and learning how to code and how to use different algorithms and packages in these notebooks that will reproduce. You can run the code, you can make plots, you can connect to data sets, et cetera. And then, if you really want to learn a specific package, Pandas, scikit-learn, those are two very popular Python ones that are used a lot in data science. Reading the documentation themselves often is useful. It's sometimes a bit dense, but they do have a lot of good examples and kind of show you the basics of how to use the main functions, things like that. As far as machine learning topics, the classic one that almost everybody goes through and looks at is a course by Professor Andrew Ng on Coursera. It's grown into a full ML specialization with multiple Coursera courses, but course one in that ML specialization is sort of the main classic one that really goes into the basics of the bulk of machine learning techniques and algorithms and methodologies, sort of the stuff that any working data scientist needs to have kind of a fundamental understanding of. Certain roles, you need to go deeper in some of those, but sort of most roles expect a kind of basic understanding of the topics in that course. So that's always a good one. There's lots of other machine learning courses and books and things like that out there, of course. Some people, including myself occasionally, it's a bit hit or miss, I would say, do find data science and machine learning related newsletters and blogs helpful. Towards Data Science is a very popular one. A lot of companies have blogs that are very good, written by the data scientists that do the work at those companies themselves about their techniques, old techniques, new techniques, how they apply them to their data. I list a handful of companies here where I have friends and they've written blog posts and they're very good and very interesting. There's also a lot of personal blogs, individual data scientists that have blogs on Medium or other blog platforms and just kind of write about, projects that they've worked on, things like that. So, seeking those out, subscribing to some of those and some of the newsletters can be useful. Certainly to give you a flavor of what people are doing at those companies and those types of companies, that can be really helpful. Sort of related, there are data science and machine learning related groups and conferences out there. ATDS, of course, is one of them. The Open Data Science Conference, ODSC, I really like. DSS is the Data Science Salon. I like them too. And then there's Databricks, which is a company that makes lots of stuff, but notebooks, collaborative notebooks was one of their first big products, and I really like that one. They have a data and AI summit. All of these are groups that have newsletters, meetups, big conferences in various places around the country and some around the world, Slack channels, all kinds of fun stuff to network, to learn, to share ideas, and including, not just data science and machine learning sort of topics, but also career related topics and how to get jobs, and they post jobs and things like that in a variety of fields related to tech and data science. So these are some that I like, but there are a ton of groups and conferences out there that one could get involved with. Books, I have a couple of O'Reilly books that I used kind of when I was first getting into data science as a career. I have gone through also Cracking the Coding Interview. That's another classic. The other two books, the Statistical Learning and the 100-page ML book, those are recommendations from friends of mine. I personally have not read them, but again, there's a lot of books out there on things about interviewing, things about resumes, and the actual machine learning, data science, kind of the technology and tools as well. So lots of resources there if you prefer books, either e or dead tree versions, up to you. And then the last thing I'll mention that there are boot camps. These used to be a lot more prevalent, and I would argue they used to be a lot more useful. But I think so many data science and machine learning techniques and tools have made their way into academia that folks with astronomy research backgrounds, not even necessarily, at the PhD level, but any kind of astro or physics research backgrounds, I'm not sure that these would be super useful anymore. But I do list some. Insight Data Science was a very popular one. That was one that I did and a number of my friends went through. It no longer exists, unfortunately. I list a handful of other ones that I know some folks who have done and have been recommended and I've seen talked about highly, though I haven't gone through them. I don't know too much about them, I'll admit. But again, I think a lot of the stuff that folks learn in those boot camps, people in astro research are picking up in their academic careers. So again, I'm less positive on boot camps for folks coming from research backgrounds than I used to be. And yeah, that's sort of the main list that I have here. Feel free to reach out. We'll share my contact info on email or LinkedIn. Feel free to join ATDS, follow the YouTube channel and the podcast, join the Slack workspace, join the LinkedIn group. And I think that's it for me.
Wow, you are a practiced speed deliverer of really great information and that stuff there, Jeffrey.
That's a nice way to say I talk fast, but yeah.
I can always slow you down. I I was wondering if, in terms of other people with, we're looking at undergraduates and they're into an astronomy degree. They've decided they love this, but they're also thinking about where are my job opportunities, not necessarily research. What advice might you have for the undergraduate who's just starting to dabble in this area?
Yeah, I think, looking at sort of the skills building area, right? If you're going to be doing any kind of coding, which just about any type of research these days is doing, try to use Python as your main coding language, right? I know there's still usable astronomy code in Fortran 77. Okay, fine. But if you can use Python, that would be great. If you're interacting with databases, whether you're building your own or using some archival databases, a lot of them are SQL. They might have a cute overlay where you kind of fill in some text boxes and things like that. But under the hood, a lot of times they are some flavor of SQL. So learning a bit more about that and using that to get archival data, if that's something that you're working on. Those are great. For the machine learning type stuff, again, it's a tool, and if that tool isn't the right tool for your project, don't cram it in. But if there is, some kind of modeling or forecasting or fitting or time series, which covers a lot of astrophysics, then, machine learning techniques could be useful. And so applying those in a research project or even, problem sets for, a course. And, that sort of also brings me to classes and coursework, right? Especially undergrads who have a lot more classwork that they're taking and potentially can fit in some classes that aren't maybe in the astronomy department. I hesitate to call them some kind of external requirement or elective or whatever, but checking out the computer science department at your university, the stats department at your university, maybe there is data science specific courses offered by one of those departments, maybe your astro department, maybe some interdisciplinary department. So looking for those kinds of courses where you can learn these skills that are applicable in industry, but might also be applicable in, astronomy research or applicable to, the astronomy that you are doing.
Well, thanks for that answer. Because as I was looking, getting more deeply into what resources are already out there, and the AAS has quite a few recordings on their YouTube channel. I was looking at some of the career advice that was going down there, and also combining that with my experience now talking to faculty members who university is really struggling with these numbers coming up and how to provide more avenues and advice to students. That one of the things that I was thinking about is that's in line with what you were just saying, is that if your university hasn't really started to map out a lot of different alternatives for you to specialize your astronomy degrees, to reaching out yourself and trying to build collaborations or even suggesting alternative coursework for your own degree that will present well on your resume.
Yep.
And and one of the pieces of advice that I also thought was pretty pertinent was that is to structure your resume not like a researcher, but like somebody who's going to industry. And I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's an entire lecture in and of itself of, what does a tech resume look like compared to an academic CV, for example. Um, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your viewpoint, tech industry folks, including former academics, don't care how many papers you wrote. They don't care about your H index, right? Sorry, bummer. That's where, that's the truth. So what do you put in there? You put in there stuff where you have applied these skills, right? I've listed a bunch of skills that data scientists should have. How did you apply those, right? Did you do a fun side project where, you're into rock climbing and you analyze the hardest rock climbing, I don't know what they're called. That's not my thing. Paths, faces, rocks to climb, mountains to climb. I don't know. And done some kind of, you've used Python and you've used some machine learning algorithm and you've analyzed some public data and you wrote a little website about it and you put it in GitHub, and that's great. Like, that's an awesome thing to put in a resume. It has nothing to do with astronomy, but it shows a bunch of skills that, a data scientist should have. More from the academic side, it's great that you took Astro 307 astronomy for data scientists or data science in astronomy. Like, okay, great, whatever. I don't care about that. But what I do care about is, what skills did you learn in that class and how did you apply it? Did you have a final project where you had to download a data set from the Hubble archive and, use some algorithm to, I don't know, calculate redshifts, measure spectra, whatever it might be? Writing about that and what code you used, what language and what algorithm and what was the performance, right? Quantitative results. Even if it was, sort of a problem set homework assignment for a class, like, and you're just remaking the Hubble diagram, like, okay, it's not groundbreaking breaking science, that's fine, but you're showing that you're applying these skills that are required as a data scientist. So descriptions like that are what you want to put into a resume for the tech industry.
Okay, those are really great. Our audience is small, but do we have any questions? You can just unmute and speak up if we just have a couple more minutes for questions for Jeffrey. All right, yeah, you feeling the pressure here. All right. Well, Jeffrey, really thank you for taking the time to do this. You've really been quite an advocate. I see you coming up in many meetings and making sure people to know, what they can do. And I particularly feel for the undergraduates. And now that we're going to, have some slowdown in the sort of repeat of COVID sort of era of, well, maybe bottlenecking on research opportunities, that people have to think about how they can take the thing that they love and find all the parts of it that they love and create a new job out of it. So for you personally, how did that journey go?
Yeah, I mean, I still love astronomy and still, keep in touch with a lot of friends around the world and, occasionally read papers from the archive and get to go to AAS for the ATDS meeting and still go to, I did supernova observations for many years. So still go to some of the supernova sessions and like to see when occasionally my papers still get cited. So that's always fun. But I don't do that on a day-to-day basis, right? I use the same types of skills, many of which I learned as an astronomer in astronomy research and in grad school and my postdoc, and they're just applied to different topics, right? Not exploding stars. It's people watching TV or using video conferencing software or using a browser for the different companies I've been at. And there's still super challenging problems. It's still intellectually stimulating. I get to learn new techniques, apply old techniques, and stuff like that. And so that is still very very rewarding and fun. And I still get to do astronomy stuff sometimes. I still run star parties occasionally for local groups. Tonight, depending on when you're watching this, but today is March 13th. There's a total lunar eclipse tonight, and I will be volunteering at the Chabot Space and Science Center in Oakland, California. I volunteer there once every couple weeks, and they're having a big, late over midnight event for the eclipse. And so I'll be there either running a telescope if the weather cooperates, which it's sunny now as I look out the window, but I think it's supposed to get ugly later. But if the weather doesn't cooperate, I might be giving a presentation inside or just hanging out with people inside the museum and talking about astronomy stuff.
Okay, well, enjoy and have fun, and I thank you for that answer and for your time. So
Yeah, you're
appreciate
welcome.
you being here, and I know you've got to run.
Yep.
I'm going to
Yes.
pause the recording while we. Okay, on to our second speaker for today, and we're really glad to have Dr. Catherine Williamson here, because Catherine, you had such an interesting career path, and I have journeyed with you as you've made some tough choices, and how all of those, your what you originally started off in, and all the things you've tried, in your willingness to just keep trying different things until you find something that really clicks. I can't wait to hear your story, and I think there's a lot of people who will benefit from hearing it as well. So with that, we appreciate you being here today, and we will take just if you have all the time you need to tell us about your life.
Okay, well, thanks for having me. I prepared some slides just to keep me on track, so I'm gonna try to share my screen really quick. Does that look okay?
Yes.
Okay. Um, so let's see. Okay, great. Yeah, so I have transitioned outside of academia about 3 years ago. It was prompted by a family move. And it wasn't just out of the blue, I decided to leave academia. It sort of was like a moment where I had to kind of decide if I was going to stay or go. And nothing's permanent, but I decided to give it a try to become an independent consultant. And so I've been doing that for 3 years now, and I call myself an Earth and Space Science Education and Evaluation Consultant. So it's kind of a mouthful, and I just had Earth and Space Science Education at first, but I have about half of my income comes from program evaluation as well. So it's kind of both, and so like half is doing actual, like where I'm the one teaching, maybe teachers or doing outreach or designing outreach programs. And the other half is like where I'm helping to evaluate and provide feedback and like interview participants and conduct surveys and see how to make those programs better from an external vantage point. And both of those take advantage of all the skills that I developed over the years as an academic. I wouldn't have traded that time. I think that time was really critical for this transition. I think it'd be really hard to do what I'm doing now without all that prior experience and that inside knowledge of how things work inside academia. Um, that's been very useful to me. And it also gives me like credibility, when people are like, oh, it somehow helps to say, I used to be an astronomy professor. It's like I'm like a trustworthy, like I'm trustworthy. And like to even say that it was a family prompted move rather than like I had some horrible falling out with my previous institution or something like that, or like I was fired or, it's kind of, I have found that it's important to talk about like kind of the personal reason of like why I'm doing this. Um, and I have met some other consultants, but at first, when I first started, I hadn't met other consultants who do like what I do. Um, and I have met them mostly through the evaluation network. There's a lot of like, I've joined the American Evaluation Association. And there's APS has a physics consultants database, and they were having like monthly chats, and I got myself added to that database and have kind of networked through there. And that's been really nice. But yeah, mostly people do like evaluation. Um, and anyway, so yeah, that's me. Yeah, so but before that, I was an astronomy professor for about 6 years at West Virginia University. And before that, I was the public education specialist at the Green Bank Observatory in West Virginia. And before that, I was a grad student. And my PhD is in physics education research. And I got a certificate in college teaching, which also helps me now because that included evaluation coursework. So physics education research. I designed a survey instrument. I conducted a lot of interviews, and so I do still very much draw on those skills that I developed as a PhD student. And yeah, and I designed my logo maybe last year. I also really love art. And being a independent kind of allows me to get back into my doing art. I didn't really lost having any free time when I was a professor. I really lost like the time to like just feel inspired to do art. So I've gotten a chance to get back to that. And I designed my logo on Procreate. And I thought a lot about it. I posted different things to like my social media and got feedback. But you know, you can kind of see it has the earth in the space, and then the hot pink magenta is, I feel very passionate as a feminist, supporting women in STEM, supporting any, minoritized people, trying to be inclusive in STEM and trying to change the field for the better. And pink just makes me feel that like passion. I love pink, and like, it's sometimes frowned on as like, I don't know, maybe not professional or something. And I really want to reclaim that and have it be like a professional science STEM thing, because why not? And then of course I love monarch butterflies, and I really feel I have a this Mapping the Milky Way project that I did many years with students, and so I wanted to have the Milky Way in there somehow. So that's where my logo came from. But like I said, I was 2 years in before I felt confident enough to be like, I'm gonna make a logo. Um, so yeah, all of this was a very slow learning process and like we'll see how this goes kind of thing. But yeah, I have my website, my domain, kwilliamsonconsulting.com, and my email is just Catherine@kwilliamsonconsulting.com. So yeah, that's a business expense, my domain name, which is cool. Oh, thank you, Emma. I see you love the logo. Yeah, very meaningful to me. Okay. Oh, and I've gotten it printed on stickers, which has been so fun to give to people that I'm inspired by. Yeah, Kate, I've mailed Kate one. Just people, it's just a really nice way to say like, I'm inspired by you, like thank you for, working with me or giving me ideas or whatever. Like, it has brought me a lot of joy to give out these stickers. And I just had like a dozen high school girls at my house yesterday, and I gave them each a sticker. We were doing like this Humanity in the Stars event. It was so cool. And it's fun the more I like allow myself to pursue these like sort of off the beaten path um, ideas, the more I like things come my way. So it's been very validating, at least so far. Maybe it will all crash and burn next year, but so far so good. Um, and so yeah, just some more. I just like wanted to make sure I mentioned these. So yeah, the decision to transition to being my own boss. Like I said, I was previously in academia, and that family prompted move caused this natural break for me to reconsider. And I just really um yeah, grappled with that for a time. Like moving was really stressful. I had like a lot of physical symptoms of burnout. I went to two different doctors, one in West Virginia, one in Alabama, where I live now, and they're both like, This is from stress." And I just kind of felt like I'm at this critical moment where I have the ability to design my life so I don't have to be so stressed out. And like, I'm gonna do that. Um, so yeah, so just I had that absolute clarity that I would rather make less money than like continue that like just really I was just really pushing for my whole career basically. And like that's not really sustainable. And so I was just really had clarity of like I want something that feels sustainable to me. If I can't find that in a regular job, I'm gonna try my best to create it. And I had put this idea of like feelers out for at least a year before we moved of like, if I were a consultant, like, would you be interested in hiring me for this? Like, I could do that. Would that be desirable to you to write me into your grant for that? just kind of getting a sense of like if people would want that. And I got a lot of positive feedback. Like, yeah, it would be great to hire, I would love to hire somebody that could help me do that for my grant. And so that really helped. And I did hire a career coach. I spent a good bit of time searching because I didn't want like just like your nuts and bolts career coach. I did not want somebody that was going to tell me to hustle. Because you do get a lot of those messages out, like when you start your own business, it's like takes 80 hours a week, and it just takes you have to push, push, push to make a business and get clients. And that was like the whole purpose of my business, is to not do that. So I really needed a career coach that understood that like I was seeking a balance, and like my health, my wellness was priority. And I like, if it's not possible for me to figure this out, then okay, but I'm gonna try to be healthy and follow my passions at the same time. Is that possible? That was the big question. So far, yes. But yeah. So, and initially I was totally dependent on my existing network, in particular the Space Grant Consortium network. I had been supported as a Space Grant Fellow when I was a graduate student, and I received I wrote and received Space Grant funds for grants in West Virginia as a faculty member. And I knew every state has a space grant, and I asked my network to introduce me. I had several conversations with the Alabama Space Grant, and it took time, but we eventually found like a way that I could, something they needed that I was able to help with, which was helping to design a K-12 outreach program for them. And so that I feel just very lucky, like, that was like they were like my only client for like a year. Um, and I also have incredible privilege. My husband works for NASA, so he has a good paycheck. We don't have kids, and it's not like we're gonna starve on the streets if I make $0. We'd have to make some changes, but it wouldn't be like we have to sell our house or something. So, and I'm a person who really needs financial security, so that was like a good, like, I don't know, it was a nice cushion for me. And then just lots and lots of networking, networking, networking. So that's like, yeah, how I kind of made the decision. Here's some like businessy stuff I have learned along the way. So I every state, I guess, is different, so you'll have to check what your state does. But I filed a new business license form with the state of Alabama. And actually the city of Huntsville, I think. I think you even have to do a city one, and I pay to renew it each year, which is about $250. I'm officially a single member LLC. Just this past year, I've started being taxed as an S corp, which I can talk about. Yeah, I made a website with Google Sites. I got an EIN number from the IRS. So instead of my social security number, I fill out forms to get paid with my EIN number, so that that income is logged into my business rather than my personal, like individual account. My business or my career coach told me about SCORE, which is just like this whole amazing network of free business mentors. And I connected with this woman through that who, she's later in her career, so she has all this time and to volunteer and has all this knowledge, and she just helped me talk through like contracts when they came in, and she would just check stuff for me. I didn't have like a ton of meetings with her, but it was just useful. That's a useful resource. The Alabama Small Business Association has like webinars that I would attend. Again, like I didn't learn a ton, but I did find my accountant through that. So I did hire an accountant to help me file things. I really don't know anything about accounting. Um, I opened a business bank account at my bank so I can transfer funds to my personal account. About a year and a half in, I purchased business insurance. Some clients actually require you to have this if they're going to do business with you. So I have general liability and professional liability, and that's about $80 a month. I'm on my spouse's health insurance, which is a really big deal. Yeah, I don't know what I would do that. That would be much harder. Again, I have tremendous privilege here. And I initially stopped saving for retirement from my academic job. I gave myself a grace period of a year, and then we did meet with a financial planner, and she helped me set up like a retirement account and kind of putting things in again where I can. So many taxes. Basically, I pay or I have paid double taxes than what you're used to in a regular job because I'm the employer and the employee. So you're basically paying both. And so I had a huge tax bill last year that was pretty shocking. And I was like, I told my accountant, like, I don't want that to happen again. What do we need to do? And she helped me figure it out for this year. And this year I'm being taxed as an S corp, and things are looking good for this year. I keep a big spreadsheet of all my expenses, mileage, deductibles. So, my attention to detail, my organization, is a really critical skill that I think it would be hard to operate my business without that. Yeah, and I got my logo copyrighted because I love it so much. I don't want anybody to like print it besides me. And that was $60 with the US like copyright office. Okay. So okay, did you want to ask a question?
Oh, no, I just keep feeling like I want to cheer for you, but I keep muting so that I can cough because I'm at the end of this cold.
Oh yeah. Um, well, so yeah, and I just, briefly jotted down some pros and cons. So the pros are that I have so much autonomy. It feels very empowering and like very important to me to be able to say no if something isn't a good fit for me. As a professor, like I would get assigned to, you still have a lot of freedom in academia, but I would get assigned to committees and the committee work would just like snowball and like nothing else would be reduced. And it just started to feel really, yeah, like unsustainable. And I just had that like stuck feeling like I can't, this is my job and I can't not do my job, right? Like, and so now like I define, I with my clients like what my job is and what that scope of work is. And if the scope changes, we can have a discussion and like I can say that isn't going to work for me, and once I sign a contract, I've committed to that. But beyond that, it just gives me freedom to know, like, I can say, like, I'm not going to do that if it doesn't feel like worth it to me, worth my time. And so it allows me to just like better align my time with like what I care about, my values, my interests, my skills. I have a lot more opportunity to be creative. I have some really fun, new, exciting projects with lots of opportunity for to be creative and make connections. And, I had been told by other people I worked with in the past, like that is something I'm good at. And so, I feel like that's like we all have our gifts and that's one of mine and I get to use it and that feels really good to be aligned with like what my gifts are and not be spinning my wheels with things I'm just not good at and not interested in. Um, Another pro is like incredible flexibility. I'm here visiting my family right now and I can work when I want, where I want for the most part. Again, like once I've made commitments, I stick to my commitments, but yeah, and I don't have to work full time. Which like that was so confusing to me early on. Like I would meet with some people and they're like, "Well, we don't have one FTE of work for you." And I'm like, "I don't want one FTE of work." Like let's have point 0.8 FTEs of work or what like I don't yeah, so it's just almost like kind of frustrating like certain like more traditional places. It's like they can't process anything less than one FTE. And so I don't know. I like not working one FTE. So I'll just make less money and have more joy. So I have more bandwidth, which is like my top priority. There were just so many times when I felt like I wish I could do that, or I wish I had the energy for this or that. Even if I had the time, the energy wasn't there. So it's been very important for me to have that again. I guess I should have saved the pros for after the cons, but anyway, here are the cons. Um, I do have irregular income. Um, I send invoices at the end of every month and different clients get them processed in different time frames. And sometimes someone needs to sign something and they don't, and I'm like, did you sign it? Like, like following up, lots of following up, like, do you know when that check is gonna get cut? And like all that stuff is not fun. Um, and yeah, that I need to be very detail oriented with my accounting. Um, every client has their own paperwork, and sometimes filling that out and dealing with their system can be annoying. Lots of double checking. Um, negotiating, I do negotiating a lot more often because it's like, well, what do you need and what do I need to make this work? And what are your resources and what is my capacity? And trying to navigate that, with every new project. My hourly rate seems high, and I mean it, I can be flexible in it, but when I first started, a friend who had done consulting before said you need to charge 3 times what you would want to make for your hourly rate because basically a third goes to taxes. And then for every hour you work that's billable, there's like another hour that's not billable. And so you really need, so it looks high. And I have had some people be like, whoa, and that doesn't feel good. And so there's that existential question of like, what is my worth? And like, what is my time worth? And, lots of ups and yo-yos with that of like, but I try to be ethical. I try to value myself and my expertise, and I try to value the client and try to provide value added, and just, that's always a figuring that out. And then the existential question of like, where am I gonna have an income from, like in a few months or after that? So those are some of the things that I deal with. Um, but yeah, I do want to end on like I've had so much fun. Like I have so many cool projects. Like these are just a few of my favorite ones. Like right now I'm contracting with University of West Alabama to plan an Alabama Youth Action for Sustainability Summit, modeled and inspired by the national and global youth climate summit movements. I'm part of Astronomers for Planet Earth, and they had some grant funding to help fund me to compile resources for the website. I helped the Alabama Space Grant Consortium distribute 50,000 eclipse glasses around the state last year. I've done several climate change and sustainability teacher professional development workshops for Alabama educators. I've been doing project evaluation for the Science Trust Project through the American Physical Society. Um, I've done a lot of astronomy, like outreach module development, in particular on the topics of finding supernova remnants and studying fast radio bursts. I'm contracting with Energy Alabama, which is a nonprofit to advocate for solar careers, and they have these really cool biomimicry lesson plans that we got the Biomimicry Institute on board, and that's been really fun and creative. And like our local solar panel manufacturer like gave me some extra solar panels and like a chunk of silicon, and I take that around to schools. I've taught middle school workshops like Tech Trek, and like I said, I had these high school girls over yesterday for this like they called it Humanity in the Stars. They're having like a whole week-long field trip to Huntsville. That was so random and beautiful. And I had them to my house. I don't have like a classroom space that I can use, but that was really fun. And then my own passion projects that I don't get paid for, but I have created a climate women painting series inspired by the book All We Can Save. And I started a Substack called Suspended in a Sunbeam, where I can just share things I'm passionate about. So yeah, I just feel a lot better about life these days. Well, uh, at least about my career. Maybe things in the state of the world are hard, but yeah, at least for now, I feel good about my decision to transition out of academia and become an independent Earth and space science education and evaluation consultant. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. That was fun to listen to. I really appreciated it a lot. And I'm wondering, one of the areas that I'm really interested in is mentoring and talking to undergraduates. And So if you're looking for other careers, or you have this wonderful combination of, eclectic interests, artistic interests, and a desire to have those be managed in a way that you have a quality of life. So if you're an undergrad and you already feel these tugs and pulls, what would your pearls of wisdom be for them?
Ooh, I guess just allow yourself that feeling, that frustration and confusion. I have felt that so many times throughout my career, and I think we should just normalize that as part of figuring out where you're trying to go. Like it feels frustrating figuring things out. And so like don't beat yourself up for that, for like not knowing what to do. Like it's hard to figure this stuff out, and be gentle with yourself, sit with yourself through those feelings. If you can hire a career coach, some of them have like discounts and stuff for students. It felt expensive to me, but I was like, I'm gonna invest in myself. I'm gonna invest in myself. Like, why not? I have the privilege to do it and I'm going to do it. And like the only thing I have to lose is money. And but so like if you can find somebody to like really help you talk you through this, like and see like what do you want? We don't make decisions in a vacuum. Like build up your network of people that can help you talk through it. Um like I think like in Quaker traditions, they have like wayfinding circles where people help you find your way through life. I hope I'm getting that right. I'm sorry if I get that wrong, but I love that idea because we need that. We need people to help us find our way. And so try to help people find people who can help you find your way, and help listen to you and reflect back what they see as your strengths.
That is an awesome way to end. And we are at the top of the hour, and I'm just so grateful that you showed up and that we will persevere in keeping the cup of cocoa going and see what people need out there and see what I can do about advertising more. So, uh,
Thank you, Kate.
so thanks for coming today. And Emma, thanks for being here till the end.
Yes, thank you.